best meta Yu-Gi-Oh decks after the Forbidden List. Today, big dog, we're going to be talking about the huge changes that happened because of the August 31st ban list and some of the top decks we're going to have to look out for initially. Let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with y'all, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. And if you guys are already checking, you should already know what time it is. It's Update Monday, a particular time where we talk about something to not only better you as a player, but more importantly, better you as a person, because I think that's way more important. In this particular Update Monday, today we're going to be talking about when it is appropriate to be proactive. Now, one thing I do want to say is that life is going to throw everything at you, big dog. And my old ass knows life has thrown almost everything that I never thought would happen at me. And the difference between growing, being successful, and maybe even getting over that obstacle is instead of being reactive, be proactive. And what I mean by that is instead of waiting for a solution to come to you, you should be actively looking for solutions, or even better, actively looking for a way to turn that situation into a good thing. And to some of you guys, I know that this may not be what you want to hear. It sucks to be in certain situations. But from what I can tell you from the bottom of my heart is that I'm rooting for you. And I know that you'll try your best to make the correct decisions. Kind of like Konami gave us a decision on our lap with this ban list. It's kind of crazy. With powerful cards like Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess being banned and Pot of Prosperity being limited, alongside of a host of other things that happened, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is kind of shaken up. And I think instead of waiting for a huge event to show us results, it's time that we start using our big brains to try to figure out what would be some of the most powerful decks in the meta. Now, you can draw on from my 22 years of experience. Goddamn, that's a lot. My accomplishments that I have in the game, as well as some input from some of the top players in the world. And you can use this information to be too strong. But I also want you guys to give information as well by putting down below in the comment section what are some other strategies you think that are going to be really good. Oh, and for people that's looking for deck lists, I'm always going to be putting them on my Patreon as a special thank you for helping me pay my editors. Let's go ahead and start off with the elephant in the room, Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes got some considerable hits on the ban list. Getting both Snake Eyes Ash and Snake Eyes Popular is a pretty decent size hit. On surface, it doesn't seem really big, but when you start to think about it, it's kind of big.
That's what she said.
It means that Bonfire and the original Sinful Spoil are a lot weaker in your deck. And ironically, it also makes interrupting these cards that much more powerful. With that, alongside the banning of Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal, Fiendsmith, Lacrima, and Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess, a lot of people would say that Snake Eyes is dead. I think you're wrong. Snake Eyes still has some pretty big one-card combo capabilities. And while a decent portion of generic boss monsters have been banned, Konami just always seems to find a way to kick itself in the foot and give us another powerful generic card. And that's only if Yu-Gi-Oh! Players themselves don't figure out another powerful generic card to be able to abuse. What's been working with me in my testing so far has been the Kashtira engine. Kashtira Unicorn not only puts one body on the field, it actually searches the ability to put another. And it's also a chunky attack monster that can check your opponent's extra deck, which is really, really good. Kashtira Unicorn and Snake Eyes Ash is actually the exact same amount of interruptions you would get before the ban list, which is great. With that being said, there's people that saying that Snake Eyes is still tier 0. I also think that you're wrong. With Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess getting banned, hand interruptions are a lot more powerful. And when I made this list of powerful decks, I think that that was one of the most important things to talk about, because if your deck loses to the Rock, you just might get socked. The Fiendsmith engine may have lost Lacrima, but because of the TCG exclusives, it's pretty easy for this deck to still make DDD Wave King Caesar, which is a problematic card in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think that this card is a threat and does solve the Nibiru problem. But that's also the reason why I think Mementos are another one of those decks that are a huge winner because of this ban list. Almost essentially nothing got hit with this deck. I mean, yes, it did lose Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess, but so did the other top decks in the game. Basically, what that means is that while some of the top decks in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game went from 3 interruptions through monster effect negation to 0, Memento went from 8 to 5. which is still a lot of interruptions. Like I said earlier, I think what people are going to look for is a way to be able to replace some of those powerful generic monsters. We lost Borreload, Savage Dragon, and Put on the Floor. We lost Appaloosa. Now we have to figure out a way to get a ton of monster negates. And the cool thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that we still have not lost those negates. They're just no longer generic. Memento has a really powerful trap card called Memento Cranium Burst. And this card states that if Memento T'Challa, while Memento Combined Creation is on the field, you can reduce its attack by 1,000 to be able to negate a monster effect on the field. Saying that Combined Creation has 5,000 attack, what the fuck? It means that it can negate 5 cards. It reminds me of the time where you ask your mom for McDonald's and they're like, we got McDonald's at home. And the McDonald's at home kind of slap. Memento which genuinely came from rags to riches. It was a deck that nobody even thought about to now being one of the most powerful decks in the game. It was doing pretty well before the ban list. It would no direct hits as well as future support coming out. I think that Memento is going to be a pretty powerful Yu-Gi-Oh deck. And to be real, this deck is almost a no-brainer, especially since it can use the Fiendsmith engine too. Now, still on the subject of Fiendsmith, there is another deck that I think is probably the best deck in the room. In my opinion, it dethrones Snake Eyes. So if you guys agree with this, let me know if you think that the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a GX deck and Yubel is here to take over the meta. Now, Yubel did have a couple of hits. It's not immune. Losing Beatrice, Lacrima, and of course Appaloosa, Bull of the Goddess were pretty sizable hits. It also lost Opening of the Spirit Gates, a card that was once unlimited, to the ban list as a limited card. But I really like Yubel here for a few reasons. The first, and I think one of the biggest things, is that the Fiendsmith engine is really good, but it gets a lot better when it's intimate with other Fiend strategies. Like it just be, oh, Fiendsmith, oh, Yubel. And Yubel right now is the strongest Fiend deck. I think one of the biggest reasons is because Phantom of Yubel. Being able to freely slap a monster down that can stop effect monsters of any kind, and more importantly, change them to, oh, you destroyed a Yubel, is one of the craziest things about the deck. And this pretty much means that your Fiendsmith engine isn't just strictly to stop cards like an Imperial Primal Being. Whether you're using it as a piece of extension or making a different rank 6 monster, all the way to fusion summoning Fiendsmith Desiree, which is kind of a crazy good Yu-Gi-Oh card, you get a lot more versatility with Fiendsmith and Yubel than you do with the other decks that I mentioned. But I think there's also one more thing that we have to talk about that puts Yubel a cut above some of the other strategies. I don't know if you've noticed for the past decade or so, but Yu-Gi-Oh has been about finding those generic cards that are way too overtuned and abusing them like no other. And with Baron, Borreload, Savage Dragon, and Appaloosa being banned, we have to figure out what's the next best generic Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's pretty simple when you say Verugus, Endbringer of All Times, is one of those cards. It works simply just like a Put on the Floor, for the exception of it requiring 2 level 10 monsters. And currently, Yubel is the only competitive Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that can summon level 10 monsters. That, with its natural ability to be immune to Nibiru, the Fiendsmith engine is so much more smooth with it. I think Yubel is the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh right now, and it's by a mile. And to keep it 55th with you, the hits feel like a slap on the wrist. I would not be surprised if Yubel won the next major event. Now that we have our big 3, I think things can get a little bit tricky. Granted, I still think that the Fiendsmith engine is pretty good, just not as strong as it once was. Though it doesn't mean decks like Chimera or Magical Musketeers can't compete, I'm not sure if I would be confident enough to put them as some of the best decks in the game. Then there are some other really powerful Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that got hit. Decks like Branded or Tenpai Dragon, I think that they have really big weaknesses in their game. Tenpai Dragon, I don't think that losing Sangen Summoning matters as much, but losing Pot of Prosperity, oh my god. Losing Pot of Prosperity may be the single biggest thing to happen on this ban list, and it's crazy. Pot of Prosperity being a consistency card, not only allowing you to be able to see up to 6 cards off the top of your deck to get into the key cards that you need, but also being a card that you can use to get into some of those more powerful cards, the cards that have been limited on the ban list. I want you to think about those times that Pot of Prosperity has completely saved you, and activating this card got you into the monster that you need. And I also want you to think about those times where you were able to deliver your combo and then use Pot of Prosperity to get some of the most unfair cards in the game. Anti-Spell Fragrance, Rivalry of the Warlords, Goals in Match, even now Skill Drain. The card is ridiculous. That by itself is going to be the most defining point in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's going to be really interesting to see how players respond to this card being limited. Now, because of that, I actually decided to look into the ban list and look at some decks that have been pretty successful. And if you guys disagree, go ahead and let me know down below in the comment section, but I think that Runic White Woods is going to be an incredibly powerful deck. This deck was already making a pretty strong showing, and while it may not be for the correct reasons, it being a deck that some players can abuse the time rules with, it's still a really good strategy. White Woods Runic can play in a way where it can be immune to Nibiru, but even if it did get Nibiru, it doesn't stop the Runic cards from being able to disrupt the opponent. This deck is built on being able to get tons and tons of advantage through your White Woods and your Runic cards, and then as your opponent runs out of steam, you summon some of the most powerful synchro monsters in the game. But White Woods doesn't necessarily need to stop there. It can be a strategy that can be mixed inside of other decks. Take, for example, there's been White Woods Centurion that's pretty popular. Centurion did lose Hot Red Dragon, Archfiend, King Calamity, but what it did gain is dealing with a meta that's not so focused on winning on turn one. In a Yu-Gi-Oh game where decks get a lot more fair, this deck gets a lot more stronger. And I think because of this, White Woods has a huge chance at becoming one of the stronger decks in Yu-Gi-Oh. The last strategy just might be a Copium take. And if you guys have a Copium take, go ahead and let me know down below. What is your take? That is, I don't know, but I genuinely have to give it to that grass is greener decks. Something about it makes me really want to say that those decks might be crazy. I'm gonna go ahead and give it to the deck I hate the most, which is Paleozoic. That deck is ridiculously hard to deal with in Master Duel, and now we pretty much get it full power in the TCG, except a lot stronger. You see, in Master Duel, Paleozoics couldn't make Totally Awesome, a way to an Omni Negation card that can not only stop your opponent's best card, can take it to use for your own, and fetches a water monster out of your graveyard. In the TCG, not only do we have cards like That Grass is Greener, and Transaction Rollback is still at 3, allowing you to be able to copy some of the most powerful cards via Elemental Burst or Rise to Full Heights to protect yourself, you now have a way to be able to stop your opponent's best cards and take them for your own. Then there's cards like Divine Arsenal AA Zeus that's never been hit on the ban list. We have Silhouette Rabbit. There's just so many possibilities with Paleozoic being one of the best strategies. And for the people that don't know, Paleozoic is a trap-based Yu-Gi-Oh deck that the Paleozoic cards themselves allow you to perform a certain function, but then when a trap card is activated, you bring them to your side of the field. And the most important thing is getting as many trap cards into the graveyard, so you can use cards like Transaction Rollback to copy them, but also since your Paleozoic trap cards serve as monsters, you can summon them too. I think with skilled players, these are the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh right now post the ban list. But like I said before, I would love to hear what you have to say and what strategies that you think are on top. Is it still decks like Tenpai Dragon or Bandit, despite them being hit on the ban list? Or is it some other strategies you've been brewing up, maybe even using the new Dragon Rulers that have been semi-limited? Until then, if you want to see more information about the ban list, you can go ahead and check out this video. And if you just overall loving the vibe and want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out this one so I can catch you on the next one.